All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us on episode 5 today. We have decided that we are actually going to talk about that new Netflix movie / documentary called Pray Away, which is basically about the quote unquote ex-gay movement that started years ago, where it kind of bases a lot around an organization that called themselves Exodus, that kind of ran conferences for people who were trying to, pray the gay away, per se. And it follows people who went to that and also helped lead the movement to change other people, and how they came around to walking away from that and accepting themselves. And we both have we both have Christian backgrounds and such, so it touched somewhere for both of us. And so we figured we'd talk about it today. But I figured first, we could talk about some moments that really hit us out of that movie. And is there a certain moment that stuck out to you?
I mean, honestly, whenever I first started watching it, I was like, "Oh, what am I getting myself into?" Kind of. Whenever we were talking about it the other day, and it just really, this is one of the very small moments, but it was one of the interviews in the beginning, whenever she was talking and she was practicing being a lesbian. And I was like,
I think it's practicing lesbianism.
Yeah, practicing lesbianism. And I was like, man. But overall, whenever we were discussing it, I was just shook by it. But then again, looking back on whenever I came out and everything, in a fucked up way, kind of my dad was even like that, towards me, and pray the gay away, in a way. And coming from a small town in Illinois and everything, that just brought back a lot from my childhood and coming out and seeing, I feel like a lot of people in my hometown, even still to this day, look at it the way that they explained everything. So overall, it is sad, but also Paul, was his name Paul?
Are you talking about John Polk?
John Polk. Jesus
Christ. I looked up the name to make sure I had it right before we recorded.
Okay. Well, anyways, whenever he was explaining everything, and it just blew my mind also that he had a child.
I think they might have had two
children. Yeah. And just his story, I actually looked him up. He doesn't have social media though. I looked him up and basically and I believe his ex-wife is still, she is still the way that she is. So
yeah, it looked like, so when Exodus closed its doors, some people from that opened another thing, and she's one of the spokespeople for that one. And I'm like, oh boy. I think all of the scenes of them together as a couple were a little awkward to watch.
Honestly,
I can tell that this is not. It's not.
It seemed staged, but it wasn't. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I feel like their relationship was so uncomfortable because they were trying to convince themselves.
Yeah.
So hard to where they couldn't. I mean, even the way that they explain it, they were not being their true selves. And it is sad. But I don't know, what was your take over it all?
A couple moments for me. One, since we're already talking about him, there's a moment, and it's in the trailer. And I wish I had went back and seen exactly what question he was asked. But it was a moment where it's just him, and he's doing an interview with a large national news or something. And who's interviewing him asked something like, so you're not just saying that you don't have those feelings anymore. Like you actually don't have those feelings anymore. The look in his eye, I'm like, the fact anyone really bought it. Because I was like, oh, my heart hurts for him.
I know exactly what moment you're talking about.
I watched just the trailer before it came out, and I was like, I got chills from that one moment.
Yeah.
And then I got into, you looked him up, and I actually looked into Julie Rogers, which is the one who had written the book. Yeah. And so one thing that stuck out to me is when she's working on the book and she reads the chapter out loud to the camera and her wife's there, or fiance at the time. And she's talking about a moment where it's like the first moment she self-harmed herself, burning with like a quarter or something. And there was just something about her reading that and her wife holding her about to cry. I think Morgan also shed like a tear, I think, at that point. And then I was struggling. But then it was like sad, but like also a beautiful kind of sad because it had this whole, full circle.
Mm-hmm.
And so that part stuck out. And I'd already talked to you about this, but there was something interesting for me personally, which I'll get into my personal story maybe at the end. But when it looks like she has a mic on, she's sitting on the front row at a church or something, because I guess she still speaks. And she references people having prophesized over her, saying that she would speak to like thousands of people and all of this stuff. And I was like, oh, interesting. That's happened to me. And I'm like, I don't think it's gone the way that they really thought when they prophesized that, because they would be like mortified.
Yeah. No, yeah.
And then I guess one thing to talk about, the thing that's really awkward to watch is, I don't remember his name, but it's the guy who's leading Freedom March now.
Oh, I looked him up. Yeah.
Which Freedom March I didn't even know existed, but my friend Taylor
Jeffrey
texted
McCall.
me.
Jeffrey,
okay. My friend Taylor texted me and was like, can you believe they're having a march for this?
No, I didn't even know about, that's whenever I looked it up. I was like, what the absolute, I looked at their Facebook page and I was honestly shocked by how many people follow it. And how many, like, even the reactions and the comments. So, like, if, for example, if there is a LGBTQ page on Facebook and it is followed, liked by many, it gets shared, you are going to see on there hate comments and people saying nasty, nasty, terrible things. You are going to see, how on Facebook now you can have those likes and your likes can be a reaction of like angry face, sad face.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're going to see those. And on their posts, they don't have that.
Oh, really?
They have what they would say negative comments. But like there's so many like heart likes, like heart reactions to it and everything. And I'm like, I cannot believe that we are in the world that we live in today and that this is something, it's fucking heartbreaking, honestly. And it just goes to show, and especially Jeffrey, I just feel like the way that he has his message, it's sad because you can just feel it. Like I felt it whenever watching him speak. Like I feel as though he's passionate about what he does say, but he is hiding like so deep down. He is hiding behind his true self, and it breaks my heart. It really does.
I wish they had gotten more into the story, which I guess I could look it up and find somewhere where he talks about it, about like the how on his, because for listeners out there, he was trans, and at some point, says he found Jesus and came out of it and now tells his story.
Yeah. And then also, whenever I saw his story, I kind of thought to myself, if I kind of wanted to put myself in a situation of if I walked out of a grocery store and he approached me and asked if he could pray over me and got into.
Oh, I don't know what I would do.
And I thought about it, and I really did. And honestly, it would probably bring tears to me. And I wouldn't ever, ever, ever want to shut him down. But in a way, I would want to be like, I feel so like sorry for you that this is just him not even being able, like, I have been in a situation where, for example, whenever my hair was short, I really, really would look in the mirror, and I would hate looking in the mirror at myself. And I don't necessarily know why. I just didn't feel confident. I didn't feel, I shaved my head because I was manic. I was going through it. I wanted to change. I feel like anyone, whenever you go through shit in your life, you want to change something, whether it's your hair or you start working out or whatever. But I did it, and I thought that it was going to be a positive effect in my life, but it actually brought out a negative side of me to where I would look in the mirror and I would just not feel like myself. I didn't feel pretty. I didn't feel like, I don't know. I just, now whenever I look in the mirror, I can tell myself I feel beautiful. You're beautiful. Take on the fucking day. But I think of myself as that. And whenever I didn't feel like myself, I was hurting. And as much as he wants to put on this big front in front of all this audience that he has, I feel like he has such a struggle behind closed doors whenever he looks in the mirror. And I can just, that's one thing that I just really took from whenever he would speak. And it didn't make me feel uncomfortable. It kind of, anyone that listens to it, you kind of do. It's not even that I'm angry. It's that I feel so fucking bad that he is just hiding from himself. And I don't know, as a religious standpoint, I just think him and the way that he was judged, or, we don't necessarily know the how, but it just goes to show that religious standpoint and where they are no better. They're no fucking better. And now he is how he is, and he's doing this movement, but for not the right fucking reasons.
No.
So
I think, and there's a scene where it looks like they're having some kind of meeting in a house or something. And I remember some friend of his walks up and he's talking about how he's like, yeah, we have this many followers now, or something like that. And then there's this moment, they're having a worship situation in this room. And they're going crazy. They are into it. And the look he has on his face standing at the edge of the room in the doorway wasn't matching.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And it's I wonder because we're human. So like, I've made decisions in my life whenever I go home, like I can beat myself up about it and everything. And I just wonder, I really wonder, and I really wish just to have a simple conversation with him on his thought process. And it's I wonder what he does, what he goes through, what his head goes through whenever he's at home alone facing it.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if you remember the scene where he got a phone call.
Oh.
Yeah.
That was also awkward to watch because it's I guess for anyone listening, a woman calls him talking about how her son came out as trans.
Yes.
Is that it?
Yeah.
And she would not accept the news that she was told. And this guy, Jeffrey, is just telling her that basically to just not accept it because in time he'll come around and figure out that it's...
Yes, and their child actually, also background, their child actually moved out and had been moved out for 6 months.
Oh, yeah, that is right.
And that just blows my mind. And I was in a very uncomfortable position whenever my hair was getting longer and I started dyeing it again. And I went to this new hair salon because I hadn't been to one here. And I was already, not that I was judging, not at all was that it, but I was kind of taken back that the hairdresser was older, because it's sad that I just know how my dad was in his older generation and being old-fashioned, that it's not that I'm uncomfortable, but I have learned now to take pride in myself of being like, I don't care the age range, but being like, I'm a lesbian. But then I was kind of like figuring it out, how to bring up that conversation. Because if you're in a hair salon, I mean, conversations get brought up. And I felt like that conversation was going to get brought up with this lady. And it did. And she was like, so tell me about your love life. Do you have a boyfriend? And I've never fucking met this lady a day in my life. Like, out of all the conversations, why that? But I had a feeling right before I sat down in that chair that this was going to come about. And I said no. And at this time, this was when everything had ended with Boston. Like, I was single, so I was like, no. And I was kind of like, bro, if she doesn't want to hear I'm gay, she can really fuck up my hair right now. Like, I was kind of scared. Like, I really was. And it's sad to say that now, as if I was put in that position. I have learned to be proud of being a lesbian. But I do have some of those. And the big reason why I am like that is because I was always shut down by my father. But then I'm sitting down and I'm like, no, I don't have a boyfriend. And she was like, well, I'm going through it right now with my son. And I was just kind of like, what is this conversation? She had to have known something. And I don't know if she wanted to hear it from my words. And luckily she didn't like get started on my hair yet. We were just freshening up. This was like, she was getting the aluminum ready, like all of that. And we're sitting there and she was like, yeah, my son has come to me about transitioning from male to female, and I cannot get myself to accept that. And I was like,
you got put in a seat
shit.
on this.
Legitimately, literally a seat. I was literally on the seat and I was like, how am I going to go about this? Like, do I get up? Do I, like, what the fuck am I going to do right now? And I was like, first off, I wanted to know if this was her only child, like how her background went about. She's a single mother and all this. And she talked about how their relationship was really rocky, but she doesn't understand how to accept that. And she went into how you were born is how you should identify and everything. And so finally I was like, well, I am part of the LGBTQ community. And I will say that this conversation is very uncomfortable for me, but I don't necessarily know how to have this conversation with you right now because I don't know you. And I feel like in this moment, I was meant to sit down in this chair with you to kind of get you to realize that whatever relationship you have with them, you need to fix it. And I felt super uncomfortable. And at that point, why the fuck would I let her do my hair? And I was like, I really do hope like you have a good day, but like this isn't the time. And I didn't go in there wanting to like have this conversation. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't going to start an argument with her, especially, but I was like, at the end of the day, you need to love your child. And I think you do need to look in the mirror and reflect on yourself, because that is a very fucking hard thing for them to do with transitioning. And the one thing that they want is fucking support, not only from friends, but definitely from family. Like, And ever since then, I did walk away from it. And it's just because I just was so like, it's kind of, looking back, it definitely was kind of a sign. And I don't necessarily know if my small little meaning and me walking away from her made her realize, but it was definitely, I was like, what the fuck was this? And then I look back and I was like, maybe I should have sat down during that whole time, regardless if she would have chopped my hair off or made me look fucking hideous. I should have maybe educated her more. And it is something, but I can't beat myself up about it. And I think that was my first like awakening to where not only do I want to be hesitant about who I am, but also with older generation, why fucking not put them in their fucking place? If you really want to go, and I'm not saying disrespect your fucking elders, but also I'm not a family-oriented person. So like if my family like fucks me over, then like I'm not going to like keep them in my life. So it's like also I don't disrespect your elders, but also if they don't respect you, then, and they can't have that adult conversation. Mm-hmm. And that has always like felt heavy for me in that situation that I was in with her. But it's gotten me to like realize a lot as well.
I think it's possible you could have done something good even by walking away.
Oh, yeah.
Since you weren't like crazy, like,
well,
fuck
I mean,
I'm out.
You think, you know how I react.
Yeah.
And in that specific moment, I wasn't like, bitch, let's go. You know,
No.
I think the way I responded was a way of me not wanting to make a situation more uncomfortable than kind of what I already was. And I'm not saying that I was uncomfortable because her child was transitioning. I was uncomfortable because I have not particularly been in a situation with a stranger to where we're talking about those things. I go to my dad and it's like I'm instantly shut down, and the response I get is, take it up with God. And it's like, all right, like if that's how you feel. And I just want to say, like, my dad not accepting me, I pick and choose my effort and my energy that I put into that. And now we're kind of like, I know deep down he doesn't accept me, but if I have someone in my life, if I have a girlfriend, like I can bring them around and he doesn't make rude comments. He knows his place, but it's also sad to know I go around him or my other family, and whenever I leave, they may think differently of me because of the way I am. And I don't even like saying the way that I am.
I know.
I am fucking me. Like, take it or leave it, bozo.
I was going to say, also talking about the lady at the salon, you said it was, it was during, it was during COVID when I wasn't seeing you as much. So like, I'm not entirely sure what was going on with you at that time, but I'm like, I'm going to go with it was obvious that you were probably LGBT, right?
Yeah.
She knew what she was doing. Oh yeah,
no, I went in there with tattoos on my legs. And whenever I tell you, Faith, that I called you Fifi. Whenever I tell you Fifi, I've never said your first name, and like I can't remember the last time. But whenever I tell you that everyone else was seriously so young, and then there was her, like, and other chairs were open, like this was just a random appointment. Like I was just like, holy fuck. And I came in with, my hair was in a bun, a headband. I had a long black baggy shirt on with Adidas shorts and my tattoos showing. So it's like, she opened that fucking portal. And I think the way I responded was the best time at that time. And it also prepared me for if that ever comes about and happens again with someone who is older or anyone in fucking general. I mean, I come from a home where people don't understand because they're closed-minded. And, you know, one thing that I've realized is there's two ways to go about it. Not say anything, but then kind of I'm losing if I'm not saying anything and if I'm not telling my story, or say something and ruin a potential relationship. But then whenever I think of ruined, I don't want that in my life anyways. If you can't accept me for who I am, and if I even have to explain the logic behind it for you of not being a fucking judgmental prick because you can't even look in the mirror and realize your wrongs. And we're not fucking wrong, but I'm talking about, for example, my dad. He will sit there and judge me and on a religious standpoint and whatever, but then he will not get sober. He will say things that are definitely should not fucking be said. Him and my mom were not married. He had that going for him. Like, he has let me down time and time again. And it's like, okay, well, if you think God is judging me for just being in love and doing whatever the fuck I want to do, then like, look at all the shit you've done. And you dragged your fucking child into it. So
I have a point of view I have on this.
Mm-hmm. Let's hear it.
So I've had this view for a while that, and it's just one which thing, I can get into it in a minute, of how homosexuality actually ended up in the Bible. It's more common than people think it is, but it's like, take into account, it's easier to point the finger, even if you pretend it's wrong. That they know you can't point the finger back at. People have put it so high on the list of wrongs. I truly believe, because unless you're in it and you're in like our spot, it is the one thing on the list that you will never do. And you can always look down at someone who does that because you have never had to deal with it. And it's just one thing you're never going to be guilty of.
Yeah.
And it's more common than people think it is, but it's like, it's easier to point the finger when it's something that they know you can't point the finger back at.
Damn, yeah.
And it's just, now I'm like, I guess I could get into that Bible thing as well. It's like, the short version of this for the listeners and you, because I don't know how much I've talked to you about this, is that, basically you have your old, and I think this is just interesting to know whether you like believe in God or not, because people bring this up all the time. It's like you have the original Greek translation of the Bible, and then we have a bunch of translations. And then what we end up with is translations of the translations.
Yeah.
And now we just got translations of just,
different translations and more translations.
And the more it happens, the easier it is for people to sneak their own thing in.
Oh, yeah.
And so basically the first time homosexuality showed up in a Bible was in the RSV version. And it was, for the Greek word was arsenokoitai. That word they don't actually know what that word really meant. Pretty much all they've got to piece together is it means male bed. That's all we got. Yeah. That's really all we've got. And someone decided, let's make it this.
Yeah.
And I actually saw that there's a new documentary that's going to come out called 1946, because this took place in 1946, and it's actually about that. And I guess people who were looking into it found a letter that someone who was working there had written to higher ups or something like this, saying, hey, I think we made a mistake. I don't think we should have used this. But by that point, the damage is already done. And, it kicks into here we are. And that one thing has turned over into how beliefs are now. And basically what most people think that word actually was referring to was how it was common back then for men to have younger male slaves that they basically had sex with in like a, like not really a consensual situation.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone would agree that like, that's bad.
Yeah.
So like, we're not arguing here.
Yeah.
But it was given that one word, and now here we are for many years just fighting this one thing that happened in 1946.
No, yeah. And, I talked about this even last night with some of my friends who came down from my hometown, and they didn't even know, like they didn't know about basically man lay with child. And I could even bring that to my
Faith's
father.
mom told me,
and I could say, hey,
like,
look at this, motherfucker. You want to throw shit in my face? Look at this.
He would still it has to
have something to throw back at me to make himself feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, and I'm going to take something that Faith's mom told me once, was she told me that she said it in reference to like my parents, which I will put on the record that my mom is a lot better about all of this than she once was. But it was the trip, I was visiting my friend Faith in Mississippi, and I had come out while I was there, and I was freaking out about coming home. And Faith's mom told me something like, you have to remember that their inability to deal with this doesn't have to do with you. It has to do with the fact that they don't want to look at themselves in a mirror.
Yeah.
Which one day we're going to have that woman on here.
Oh, yeah. She would be phenomenal. But no, exactly. And at this point, because I know there's people out there that are like, don't quit fighting. Like, you need to like tell your dad or your family this, and this. But it has affected me so much to where I don't care to have that conversation anymore.
Yeah.
I'm obviously not going to change your mind. And you know what? You're the one creating this path between me and you. I have tried. I have always been like a daddy's girl. Like, I have been there for him. He has put me through a lot of things in my life that I haven't held against him. Like, I've worked on letting that go. And it's like, this one thing, you can't just allow yourself to learn about and love your child regardless. And one day, and he is older, but one day if I were to get married, it's that tough thought of, why would I let him walk me down the aisle whenever I know deep down, as much as he wants to say, I'm happy for you, his ending sentence would be, but you can take it up with God. Yeah. And it's like, and that's fucking heartbreaking, and I know obviously I'm not the only one to go through this, and I'm nowhere in a point of like getting married anytime soon, but it's like, I had tried to have those conversations with him. And as you know, my mother, she passed away in June. And something that I have beat myself up on is she never got to know the real me. She knew like I had girlfriends and such, but she never knew of them. Like, she didn't know who they were. Even though our relationship was very not unhealthy, but wasn't a motherly daughter relationship because of where we went, what we went through whenever I was younger, she never turned her back on me like I have had with my father. And I look back on that, and it's like, that's why I think life is too short. And that's why I'm kind of at the point of, okay, let me tell my story and let me tell who I am to the people who want to know. And I really do believe, despite the drugs and the alcohol and what she went through, I really do believe, like, if I would have taken the time to sit down at a point where she was not intoxicated and she actually could take moments for me to have that conversation, I feel like she would have looked me. And it's so good to have this feeling right now, because our relationship did end off very poorly, is I know that she would look at me and she would say, I love you regardless. But as for my father, I would never feel that. I've never felt that with him. I know he always had something to say, but for my mother, she would love me unconditionally. And I'm glad that I have that feeling, even though we ended off. I mean, I wouldn't even say ended off. We never had that last conversation, but it's good to know that wherever she is, she does love me, and she loves me with all of her heart. And it's like, for my dad, would he love and accept me whenever it's too late? But it's like, why would I put my effort there whenever there's other people in my life? And I don't think it has to be family that is going to say, hey, I love you regardless.
Yeah.
My godparents are phenomenal with that. They have never, ever, ever, and they're older too as well. Mm-hmm. And they have never shut me out. They have said, hey, I love you. And those words, hearing it from a parent, means so fucking much.
Yeah.
And if you turn your back, it's just like, I'm trying to figure, it's already a toll you're trying to figure yourself out, you know? You're trying, I mean, some people, it's hard for them to even accept. Like, it's this constant battle of like, who am I? And then on top of that, you have a parent figure that's like down your throat and like making you feel that everything you're doing is wrong. It's so unfair, but it also builds you to be much more stronger.
Yeah.
And for that, that's like kind of who I am. Like, I am who I am today because of the shitty card I was dealt. And I wouldn't have it any other fucking way. And I'm glad for that, because what if I felt sorry for myself and always felt this like pity party, and what good is that going to do for me? You know,
Nothing.
It's like, and that's kind of like where I'm at with it. And it's just, I'm figuring out the more and more, like, I wouldn't say that I am like religious. Because I think the rules of it they don't make fucking sense. Mm-hmm. Especially Christianity, whenever we have like coming from a Christian background. And it's like, fuck, make me understand, make it make sense. What you're saying, make it make sense. Because you're making it up, like, you kind of make it up in your head. Like, you hear this passage and then you completely reconstruct it, and then you're like, oh yeah, fuck you, you're doing wrong, but
Well, the other thing I can add there is, I think people get very into it as well, is because it gets political in the sense that people started making it this, which they talk about it in Pray Away, about how it's the same one who said, like, practicing lesbianism. When they had her, they were showing her going around speaking at churches and events, trying to get people to vote no on Prop 8 in California. Yeah. And she was literally saying, she's like, it was my job to make people think it would affect them. Like, how could I make them think it was going to affect them? Even though it wasn't really going to. And it's kind of the same thing as with abortion. You know, you just have politicians who are like, there's a podcast episode somewhere that talks about it, and I was like shocked by it. But I mean, that's how it ended up such this big political issue, is they literally used it to manipulate the Christian community to vote for their party. And it's the same thing with this. So it's like, oh, let's take these two things and we're going to make people like really demonize it so that way we can manipulate.
Yeah.
And I think for me, a lot of it is that it takes, it's kind of, there are some people it's not going to matter what you do. But I think for a lot of people, getting them to open their eyes to it is for them to suddenly be like, oh, I know someone who's LGBTQ or whatever. Because a lot of times people make comments and they don't even know.
Yeah.
And then the second that they have to put a face to it, someone they know and care about, it changes things.
Yeah.
And because I've had a couple friends that were that way too. And it's really funny because she's like not, we haven't talked about this issue in particular in a long time, though she likes to know who I'm dating and she loves to hear the gay trauma, like for genuine fun. I joke and I'm like, you got your popcorn ready? You need to pop some. And then I tell her something.
Yeah.
But I think it's being able to not demonize each other is how like you start to open those doors.
Yeah.
But she and I were really good. She was in town not long ago. But yeah. And talking about parents, one, for the listeners out there, my mom doesn't know about my girlfriend. So here's to her never finding this podcast.
You need to tell them how long y'all have been together.
I was gonna avoid that.
Oh,
honey,
okay. Never mind.
In case my mom found this podcast.
Never mind. Well, now she's gonna know. Okay. Anyways.
Yeah, but definitely a minute, a good couple minutes too long for this. But you know, you do what you gotta do. I think like we don't have time for me to go into my whole background, but I came from like, I was like, I like knew I was gay when I was like 10 or 11. I don't know. Like it goes back, you know, pretty far. You don't really realize that's what's going on, but like you kind of know what's going, you just don't have a word for it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up in church and I was like playing in the band all the time. When I was in high school, by the time I was like a sophomore, I was playing every Sunday morning. Sometimes I was leading worship. At one point at my like when I was at church the most, I was like getting there at like 7:30 in the morning on Sunday, practicing, not really leaving until like, I don't know, like 1 o'clock, whenever we would get out. And then if it was a Sunday that we had a youth event thing, I was back at like 4 or 5 o'clock to go over practice with that band because I was in charge of that. And then on Wednesday, I did the same thing again. And then I had another Christian band. And then I had my own Christian music, which is really funny because if people don't know, I put out an entire like Christian record in 2012 that I'm pretty sure is fully deleted on the internet. If anyone wants to try and find it and let me know if it exists anywhere, please let me know. But and even when I was writing that record, I like knew that like I had a lot of conflict for a while because I was like, I'm writing all this Christian music and doing all this stuff. And I did genuinely want to do it, but I was like, there is no place here. I was like, I have to pick.
Yeah.
At some point.
Do you think that also it was hard because did you automatically know how your mom would react too?
Oh, then we had the additional part that was my mom is the oldest known living person with a specific heart defect called Schoen's complex syndrome, which short version is that her heart is wired bonkers. That's it. And so she's had a bunch of like surgeries and stuff. And, you know, she had to be kept in like low stress or she'd have arrhythmia problems. And then it's like they shock your heart. And then I was always told, well, and then one day they can't shock it back. And then, you know, so you live in this like, oh, if I tell her she might fall over with a stroke. So it's like, it was a stressful time. But, and I think I wanted to play in the band because I was really into music. But I think to a point I was like, if I'm real good.
Yeah.
I think that was my version of the pray away like concept. I was like, well, you know, and I managed to not like completely hate myself at any point, which I don't know how I managed
Yeah.
to not be like that. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with the parent thing. She didn't respond well at first. And then shockingly, like she really didn't do well at first.
I feel like that's typically how it goes.
Yeah, I'm not going to give any specific stories just because I don't want people to imagine that she's terrible, because she's not. She's gotten real far.
No, she is. She's a great.
She loves
mom.
Christian, everyone. I think she would like us to get. If I was going to marry someone who's not a man, I think she would like me and Christian to get married, and it would make absolutely no sense. But the first time she met Christian, I was like, Christian had really short hair back then, and I was like, I'm moving into a house with 3 other lesbians, and so I don't know how this is going to go when my mom meets them. And which it was just you and Danny at the house that day. And my mom left and was like, I could just put Christian in a box and bring her home. She's adorable. And I was just so shocked. I was like, okay.
As much as not to toot my own horn or anything, but I think I just have this thing with parents. I've had girlfriends in the past where their parents did not accept them. Dads scare me. Dads will, you know how dads are with their little girl. But I've had parents in the past, as much as they wanted to hate me or even the relationship, not hate, but not like it, they always said good things about me. They didn't necessarily they had bad things to say about the relationship, but I just knew that your mom, that situation and living in the house and everything, I just knew your mom automatically knew our friendship was so good. She knew, and I haven't seen her in so long. I absolutely adore her, but it is a good feeling knowing that friendships, relationships, whatever, that parents know my intentions are good. And she's always said the sweetest things. Love her.
No, she loves you.
Yeah.
She also really loves my girlfriend, but she doesn't know. So,
bestie vibes only.
The days I'm telling her, so I'm supposed to go on a trip with them.
Yeah.
And my dad and I talked about not, I'm going to tell her. I was like, I'm too far in it. I was like, we gotta tell her.
Well, you really didn't touch base on where you and your dad stand with it.
Dad and I are pretty good in the sense that his brother's gay, and that's kind of where it runs in the family on that side. It genuinely does. Yeah. And I remember I flew home from the trip that I came out to my parents while I was gone, and I was we were in the car. He picked me up, and we weren't really talking. I was like, I assume Mom told you. And he goes, yeah. And there's 2 stick out moments here. One, he's a man with a lot on his plate.
Yeah.
It's even worse now than it was then, but he was like, I wish you would have gave me a heads up before you did it. And I was like, well, when do you think would have been a good time? And he was like, never. And I don't think he understood how much that hit, but now he's fine with it. He knows everything. Everything's good. But there's another funny point from that car ride that I remember where he was like, he told me that my mom was mad because he wasn't mad. And I don't know if I've told you this little story, but he was like, I forgot for 2 seconds, but he was like, I've always known, so how can I be mad about something I've always known about?
Yeah.
And he was talking about how it's my mom just somehow completely ignored every possible sign. And he said there was this moment, a few days before I went out of town, I went through this moment where I was cleaning out my closet. Mm-hmm. And he said he almost came in there and said, oh, hey, are you finally going to come out of that? And he said, but I just decided maybe I should wait for you to do it on your own time.
That would have been a good kind of a jokingly time for him to say it.
I kind of wish he had just done it.
Yeah, just to get it over with. But I think a lot of things like that, looking back at my baby pictures, I make little comments to myself. I'm like, how did my parents not know I was gay? You know what I'm saying? And it's just I feel like they all have, like your mom, she had ignored like all signs or whatever. I just coming out, like my coming out story, which we'll definitely have to get in that a later episode.
I feel like this is turned into another episode deal.
Yeah,
so.
it definitely has. But regardless, like whenever I told my friends, they're like, I already knew. I was just waiting for you to come to us. Like, I think with that situation with parents, even when they are ignoring the signs, they like deep down, they know. And they take some time to accept it. But I feel like a lot of parents they have to come around and they have to, because I mean, it does depend on like, it's something that definitely we could look into statistic wise of the age of them and possibly like where they're from. I mean, my hometown, I went to lunch with one of my friends because we have open campus, and the nurse was texting her mom, is so-and-so and Christian dating? They went to lunch together. Like, are you serious? Like little stuff like that. But like where you're from and the background of it and how open-minded you are, how you were raised, like whatever it may be. But older generations, the reason why I feel like they're hard to come around to is because like back in the day, my dad always said, if this were to go on whenever I was your age or back in the day, like they're just, it never would have happened. Well, wake up, times have now fucking changed, sir. So, but yeah.
Maybe another episode we need to just talk about our coming out stories more specifically, which I think would be interesting because we have enough age difference that there's and came out at such different times within that range that it's pretty different.
Coming out and even throwing it like on a range of like religious.
Yeah.
And
I think we can do
our
that.
background. But either way, because we come from some weird church stuff. But no, it's good to know, like, I don't need an approval from a parent. I have kind of worked through that with my life. Like, also how we were raised were completely kind of different, you know? But we think very similarly, which is, of course, why I love having conversations with you. But no, I hope that, I'm glad that you're coming to the terms of, like, did you and your dad have like this kind of sit down plan of like, okay, this is what we're telling her, like, whenever you tell her about Morgan? Or
we haven't got that far.
Okay.
But we agreed,
but it's still up there finally.
We agreed that we like will, so we're on the same page. Because like good. Because I really feel like, you know, I don't want her to get mad at him for knowing and not telling her. I'm like, I got some things to work through. But I guess to relate this really quick before we, you know, call it today, like to relate it to the subject of vulnerability. I think it was related to the podcast because I think for both of us, like a lot of having to learn how to be vulnerable was coming out. Like that was like a huge storyline, and that's really where it started for me. So it's kind of, and I think we'll have another episode to expand on.
I mean,
maybe that journey of it as well.
Even talking about it now, it's just a lot of things are going on in my head that kind of, not that I shut down, but it's kind of like I'm proud of my coming out story. And looking back, it's like, damn, I went through some shit in high school. But it's also with our audience, it's just like, don't be scared to like find yourself there, because your parents may not accept you, but you have people that, or you may come across people and finding new people in your life that absolutely fucking will, despite of whatever it may be. And I'm glad we're here doing this because it's like kind of an awakening for me. And like, it's just, we're doing the damn thing. And hopefully again, like what we have to say hits you guys to where you may bring stuff to us that we haven't even thought about or that we can talk about. And I know we've said it in a couple of episodes, but for real, like if you have situations that you want us to talk about, or even like you may not think the way that we think, or you watched Pray Away and you may think differently of how we were looking into it, like just let us know.
Yeah, or if there's a topic you want us to actually talk about, hit us up and let us know what that is.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I guess we'll wrap up. If you want to send us any of that stuff, you can DM us on Instagram at nosubjectapparel, or you can shoot us an email at vulnerabilityisinpodcast@gmail.com.
Sweet.
But yeah, until then, we'll see you next week. See ya.
See ya. Thanks, guys, for listening.
You can follow us over at No Subject Apparel on all social media.
You can discover us on YouTube.
And please like, subscribe, follow, and review us on whatever platform you're currently listening on.
New episodes will be dropped every Tuesday.
And you can sign up for our mailing list in the description of this episode to get a personal message from us and reminders for new episodes every week.